In this lesson, we're going to create a flexible iris with light control. So if you want to follow along, you can open c_06_roborigging_start.blend. So first, we're going to make the robo mesh unselectable again so we can select the bones without selecting the mesh. So we will quickly take off the custom bone shape from these bones. If you use the 3-button mouse simulation, you can simply turn one off like that. From there, simply select all the other iris bones and select the one without custom bone shapes last. And then you simply right-click here and then copy to selected. Now they no longer have custom bone shapes. So now what we need is we need targets to these. So to do that, simply go to edit mode. And I'm inside because it's going to be easier to select. So I'm going to select the tip of each of those bones. Then I'm going to press Shift S and choose cursor to selected. From there, I'm going to switch this to 3D cursor and I'm going to press E and I'm going to press on the right mouse button. So it sort of cancel it, but the extrude is still there. And I'm going to press S to scale. So it's scaled towards the 3D cursor. Now from there, I'm going to choose all of these bones and we're going to quickly rename them. So Control F2, and then from there switch this to bones, and we're going to look for .001, and we want to change that for _T for target. And from there, press OK. So now all of these 8 bones are now targets. Now I also need a bone right at the center to control these. Now to do that, simply press Shift A in edit mode and a gigantic new bone is going to appear. Now, if you switch this to active element, you can press R and then X and then 90 to rotate that 90 degree in the X axis. From there, you can scale that down considerably and make it skinnier with Control Alt S. All right. From there, what I want to do is I want to select these bones and I want to parent them onto that bone. So Control P and keep offset. Now this bone, we're going to call it, let's actually scale it down a little bit. Let's call this one iris_O for offset. So iris_O, capital O. So that's an offset bone. So now in post mode, that should move these. So what we want to do is we want to add a stretch to constraint to this bone so it follows to that one. So what we do is we go here, go constraint, we go stretch to, choose the armature, then from there type in iris, and then from there choose 1T. Right? And then we're going to do the same thing with this one. So stretch to, armature, iris, 2T. And we're just going to speed up this part because it's the same thing. It's just adding a stretch to constraint added to the armature. Search for the right target bone for each of those bones one by one until you have all of them set up. It really doesn't take that long. It's just that for the video, it makes it longer for nothing. So now we have a proper setup for the iris so it moves around. So I'm going to hide the actual glass. Now, as you can see, we're going to have a bit of vertex group editing to do to make it properly work. But essentially, if you scale this, it scales the whole. And you can also rotate it in one direction so you get a closed hole like this. Okay. So this is how we do this one. So I'm going to Alt-R, Alt-G, and then Alt-S for this one. So we need to add a few locks. So you obviously don't want that to move that direction nor that direction. All right, so we're going to lock the Y. And we only need the this rotation axis. So we're going to switch this to XYZ earlier to keep it simple. We're going to keep Y. And we want to be able to scale everything but Y. All right, so it sort of scales like that. And then from there, you can quickly rotate it that way and then move it about. All right, Alt-R, Alt-G, Alt-S to clear rotation, location, and scale. So let's add a proper control bone. So we're going to simply tab it into edit mode, Shift D, then we're going to scale that a little bit and we're going to make it skinnier with Control Alt S. And then let's rename that one with a capital C for control. So that's the control bone. So we're going to parent this one to that one. So Control P, keep offset. So the offset to parented to the control. So let's actually do a bit of cleanup. So we're going to select these bones real quick. So let's speed that up a bit. And then we're going to press M and we're going to move that to that layer here. All right. So the point of having two of these bones is that we can use this one as a offset and to set basically what it needs to look like. So we're going to switch this and we're actually going to move it in the Y so we can sort of correct that through thingy. So it looks a little bit better. All right. So now we use this one to actually control the overall. Now, obviously, we do need to do a little bit of weight editing. So let's do that right now. So we're going to make the mesh selectable again. We're going to select the mesh. And then from there, let's go to wireframe because it's going to be easier. Tab into edit mode, switch to vertex mode. And let's quickly go and shift select the vertices that we need. All right. Let's also speed up this part so it doesn't take too long in this video. And then these one. Then let's go to the vertex panel, vertex group, and then choose the body and assign a weight of 1. And we're going to go to the iris and we're going to remove the weight from all the iris. Let's also speed this one up. Now, if we tab out of there and go back to the material view, we can see that it no longer actually stretched on the side. Now, it doesn't look perfect. Now, it's not meant to be perfect. This is the low res, so if we turn off simplify, we'll have the subsurf version, and it looks great, all right? So let's put simplify back on so it's real time, and now I think that we're ready to actually create the light controls. So let's get on with that. All right, for the light, we need 2 custom property on the actual control bone of the iris. So we're going to go to the bone panel. We're going to go at the bottom and add a custom property. We're going to hit edit and we're going to call this one intensity. We're going to set it to 2.5 and this one to 0.0 and then set this to something like 100 and then press OK. So now we have a custom property right here. I'm going to right click and copy the data path. Now from there, let's actually expand the bottom so we can have a shader editor and let's select the light. A quick explanation on the material. It's a very simple material. So you have a image, which is basically UV based, and then you have a color ramp, and that is basically setting the base color as well as multiplied with a mix color node. With a factor of 0.5 and a gray color, so it sets the roughness. And then from there, you have another color ramp that is set into a multiplier value that is able to set the emissions higher, so that way you set an intensity by multiplying this value right here. And then it's fed to a color mix with a multiplier, and then you have a color that is set in there. Right, so we want to drive the color as well as the intensity. Here we have the intensity of the light. So if you put, for example, bloom on and you crank that value, you get a nice glow. So let's put bloom off. And then what we want is to drive that value from that bone custom property. So we're going to add a driver here and we're going to set it to +0.0. We're going to switch this to a single property. We're going to choose the armature and we are going to paste the data path with Control V. Okay. So update the dependency. And now if I select the bone here, I can crank the intensity directly from the bone without having to go to the material. Now, what about the actual color? Now this one is a little trickier. So let's select the bone and let's go add another custom property. Now we already know, so let's call this one color. We already know that if we have a float value like the one we have in here, we're going to get a float type of property. If you do put an integer inside here, you'll get an integer type property. If you type a word, you'll get a string. All right. So if you go in here and type in 0.5, comma, space 0.5, comma, space 0.5, comma, space 0.5, we're going to get a quad value, which stands for RGBA. All right, so here, let's set that to 0.0. And here you'll see that now we have a subtype that popped open. And this only pops open if you have this on there. All right, so here, it could be 0.0, 0.0. 0.5 is just easier. So plain data here, we're going to switch that to linear color. And from there, we're going to press OK. And boom, we've got a color swap right here. Right. So to make this work, let's go to RGB. All right. So we've got eRGBA channel right here. So you don't right click here and copy this data path, although you could. What you do instead is you copy this one. All right. And then you select the light. And then we're going to get rid of this. And then we're going to right click, or actually click inside the color to open the RGB. And we're going to right click on the R, and we're going to add a driver. From there, I'm going to make it plus 0.0. I'm going to switch this to a single property value. I'm going to switch this to the armature, and I'm going to paste my data path in there. However, I'm not going to press enter. What I'm going to do is I'm going to open a bracket, and I'm going to enter 0 in there and close the bracket. Now, what happened is it's 4 values. So they're remembered with a number. So the first, which is R, is 0. And the next one is going to be 1, which is G. And then the B is going to be 2, and the alpha is going to be 3. All right. So let's update this dependency. All right, so now we have a driver there. So if I click on here and I right click on the driver, I can now copy the driver and paste it on the G. So we're going to paste that one. And I'm going to right click and edit that driver. And here I'm going to switch this number to 1 and press enter and update the dependency. Now I'm going to click there again, and I'm going to paste that driver on the B. Then I'm going to edit that driver again, and I will change this number to 2. And then I will press enter and update the dependency. So now let's do the same thing with the alpha value. So let's paste the driver and let's edit the driver. And we're going to switch this one for 3. So if I press enter and now update the dependency, now if I select the bone, I have a complete control over the color directly in the wheel here. Now we don't need alpha, right? So we can switch that. And you can also use the HSV if you want, it will still work. So this is a much faster way to animate that color value, because you simply need to click in the color and right click and set a keyframe. And then from there, if you have auto keyframe on, you simply click, change the color. It also works with the HSV, and you can change the intensity without having to go inside the material editor. So it saves a lot of time.